Okay, looks like we need to up the brightness on this, or is it adjusting? Is it adjusting some? Might be adjusting some. Okay, keep it a little. Let's see. Can I lean back comfortably? I had to shift my surroundings a little bit. Maybe I'll lean forward over this. Let's see. Can I move the bench closer? I'm gonna do this. All right. Yeah, this is probably gonna jiggle the thing something fierce. Okay. Yeah, I had to switch up my surroundings a little bit because somebody complained on the last live stream. I had my, uh, what do they even call that? What do they even call that place where you're just walking in the door and it's not a hallway really, and you can't call it an alcove. Is it a foyer? I don't even know. Anyway, it's basically that little section of hall where you've got like rooms on any other given side. This background looks boring though. I don't know if I like this. Let me see. What if I change it like this? Maybe if I just varied it up a little. Maybe if it looked like I was reclining or something. I don't know. I'll figure something out at some point. Anyway, let's just leave it like this for now. It looks a little bit better than the like straight across view you were getting before. Anyway, what am I talking about today? Not too terribly much. Happy Juneteenth. I know it's belated Juneteenth for everybody out there, but I was going to do this live stream yesterday, and instead of doing that, I watched Ethan Van Sciver's live stream instead, and I don't know if that was actually worth it. Good God. I have never seen just a live stream of somebody complaining about somebody else's remarks, and just, you know, he calls the EFAPing every frame a pause. And I'm like, wow, it is every frame a pause. It's not much on the entertaining side at all, because all he's doing is he's listening to somebody complain about Comicsgate, and then he's complaining in return, and he's got John Malin for entertainment purposes, I guess, to kind of do side comments and stuff like that. And good God, I mean, you could just basically tune in and then get the hell out, and yeah, there was not much to that. So I guess maybe I should have gone on live stream yesterday, but I figure, what the hell? Why compete? You know, I don't want to try and be taking any of his viewers from him. Although maybe I would have given them, you know, like a safe haven from all that mess. So Juneteenth was yesterday. Juneteenth, I like the holiday. I mean, I like the fact that it is a holiday. Let's just put it that way. I mean, as a holiday, it rates about as much as Good Friday does, which is to say not at all. Because, you know, all the people who were taking Good Friday off, I was basically the guy who stayed at the office on those days. I'm like, why should I sacrifice a day for Good Friday? You know, this is not going to pay. So I would just basically stay home unless it was one of those days. In the first years when I was working at this one company, I want to say for about 10 years, Good Friday was actually a mandatory company holiday. And then after Good Friday, or after that, they just gave us one more floating holiday to go with our other three, you know, what they call sick days or floating holidays or what have you. And yeah, that was about it. It was our choice whether to take it or not, and most of the time I didn't. You know, I'm the kind of guy who, if I had a job where I could store up vacation days and then just get them in pay for the rest of the year, you know, maybe if by the end of the year, if I hadn't used up all my vacation days, I would just get paid for those days. That would be ideal. I really wish companies would do that, because otherwise I'm just winding up taking vacation days when I don't really need to. I'm just taking a day here or a day here, and it just winds up being a drag because, you know, I don't do well. At least at the time, I didn't do too much away from home. I didn't have that many, like, you know, outdoor hobbies. I don't have any outdoor hobbies now. So anyway. So Juneteenth, yeah, I'm glad they added that to the calendar. I've got a series of videos on Juneteenth. If you want to go look those up, there's about 4 or 5, and I stand by them. You know, they're good videos. And beyond that, the only other thing to talk about is Eric July's newest Rippaverse edition of a charity that it's called Comic Books for Kids, and now he's able to. I haven't looked at it on his subscriber page yet, but I bet this is going to give a big boost to his numbers, and I wouldn't be surprised if these numbers are counting towards his overall goal, and they should. I mean, there's no reason they shouldn't. But during this campaign, he's going to be offering half-price copies of ISOM number two for some reason, not number one. But he'll be offering half-price copies of ISOM number 2 to charity, to this place called Comic Books for Kids, and they're going to be distributing it to places like hospitals and like, I guess, children's wards or Ronald McDonald House or places where there are children, or even at schools, And honestly, you really do want to get those schools saturated with comic books, whether it's going to be independent comic books like ISOM or it's going to be Marvel and DC stuff. Well, these days with the Marvel and DC stuff, there, I guess those are the ones that pretty much toe the standard line anyway. But I remember the days when there were comic books in my school. That's actually where I picked up on ElfQuest for the first time. I didn't know anything about ElfQuest until I read an ElfQuest #1 in my 8th grade reading class. And that was where I was introduced to that. And oh my gosh, that series had a hold on me. And what was really interesting now looking back on it was the way that Marvel adapted that. They put it as part of their Epic Comics line. And ElfQuest originally came out as a publication by Wendy and Richard Pini themselves. It was kind of more of I want to say a self-published thing, although I think they did go through Diamond. But they, when it was licensed to Marvel, so that Marvel would reprint it in their Epic Comics, Marvel actually went through the trouble of drawing and writing introductory pages to kind of show the reader, here's what's been happening so far, which is something that the Peenies did not put in their own comics themselves. Now, I don't know if the Peenies contributed that to the Marvel Epic Comics, to basically say, okay, we'll help you out by giving like little introductory pages to show what had gone on before. But that was actually part of the adaptation process. So I remember that series pretty fondly. I still have the first 6 volumes of ElfQuest, which takes you through the main story and the one story beyond that. I didn't like the later stuff, and I did try to read some of their novelized content. There was The Blood of 10 Chiefs, I want to say, was it was a collection of short stories based on the Marvel or not Marvel, the ElfQuest characters, and it was okay, and it was a little bit more adult. That whole series was a little bit more adult than I would say anybody was necessarily ready for, but I guess it sold well enough, and it certainly goes down in the hallmarks of self-published books as one of the greater contributions to the world of comics. So yeah, the having comics in schools is a great idea because most kids, I don't think they go straight from reading picture books to reading novels. You wouldn't expect them to. You would expect them to have that bridge. You would expect them to have picture books and then comics, and then you would have novels after that. Assuming they made it beyond that level, because in the picture books with the just the slight amount of words, the Dr. Seuss style stuff, the 1 and 2 syllable words, if that, then they would graduate into the comics where there are more adult towards adult themes, but not necessarily having to be adult themes. There's different genres. You've got young adult literature, you've got all that kind of stuff, and it just makes sense to have that progression. And for schools to have that free library material of comics available for kids, I can't see how that wouldn't be invaluable. And, in Eric July's favor, he's doing this not only because it's a good idea from a benevolence standpoint, but it's also a good idea from a making money standpoint. I mean, there are people who are going to be donating $17.50 per ISOM number 2, and that's going to be just bumping it up his titles. Like one of the short videos that I just came out recently with was, why aren't you buying more books instead of just dropping money in his live chat? That doesn't make sense for you to, when he's got a campaign going and you want to see that number continue to go up, and he's got stretch goals in mind. All of these people who are dumping money into his live streams, they could just as easily be dumping money into his comic, but they're not doing it. Why? Because, I guess they figure at some point they've got enough product. Well, now they've got a way to donate money endlessly. Anytime somebody wants to come in and slap down $100 for no reason whatsoever, now they can go buy like 6 to 8 books of ISOM number 1. How many would that be? That'd be about six books of ISOM number 2, and donate that to kids in the area, to kids in the hospitals, in the schools and whatnot. And it's just an unlimited opportunity to just dump more money into the company. And that's great. I mean, one of the things you've got to admire Eric July for is that the moment he sees a good idea, he snaps it up. He immediately snaps it up. This thing, he got this one from his friend Drunk 3PO, who is a fellow YouTuber. Yeah, he got that idea from him because Drunk 3PO had an option on his book, which was the Achromatic Tales or something like that. I actually did a video on the Indiegogo campaign for Achromatic Tales. I was not really enthused about the campaign page. I don't know really anything about the book, but the campaign page was so lackluster. It was like, please try to not sell me your book. I mean, you're succeeding immensely. But as far as the donation idea goes, the idea that you can just pay in some money and then donate a comic to a school or a hospital or a charity or some kind of thing, or a library, that's an amazing idea. And when Eric July saw that, he was just like, I'm doing that. And that kind of initiative, because that wasn't something that was on the horizon originally. That was something that, he saw someone else doing and he adapted it. And that's so much of success in life, is to see what other people are doing right and copy that. There aren't a whole hell of a lot of innovative ways to be successful. Not everybody is going to invent something new. Not everybody is going to do the next new thing. But think about all the people out there who are doing stuff like, live streams like this, and then they have merchandise like, Rippaverse caps and stuff like that. Think about those people, and all they're doing is they're contacting a manufacturer, somebody over in China, saying, hey, send me a sample with my logo on it, and then ship a sample to me, and then I want to order this many, and then I'm going to set up a Shopify, like so many people in the past have done by now. Set up a Shopify or some other kind of store page. Of course, Eric July's got his own store page, and I'm going to sell these on my store or on my Shopify page, something like that. All you're doing is making money the same way that other people have made money, but that's how you can be successful. You don't have to create a brand new business that nobody's ever done before. You can just create one of the same businesses. I remember I'm in this thing called I've heard of this thing where they're developing candles. They're developing candles that are branded with the company brand. Candles. And I'm like, I know there's going to be people buying these candles because I know there's people out there who are liking the brand Something Fierce. I never would have thought of that. Who would have thought of candles? But, that might be one of those low-cost items that you can sell for a high markup. It's one of the things I learned from some of these entrepreneurial videos is that if you look for items out there on these wholesaler sites, like I guess Alibaba is one of those wholesaler sites, and you can see like, maybe it's a room fan, an automatic fan, and you can buy one of these for like a really, really cheap price, really cheap unit price, and then resell it at like 4 or 5 times the markup, maybe even 10 times the markup. And that's all you have to do to make money. That's the basis of making money right there. You take something and you package it in such a way, or you combine it in some way that makes it useful. And then you put it together and you sell it for a higher price than you paid for the materials. You would think that the formula has to be something more than that, but it really doesn't have to be. It's all, in the end, comic books are all paper and ink. In the end, comic books are all ideas that you can put on a page, and you send it over as software, and somebody turns that into art, and then somebody turns around and turns that into digital images that get colored, and then you get letters, and then somebody prints that onto paper and then binds it in a binding, and then you've got a book, and you sell that book for so much more than you paid in, and that's how you make money. And I don't know, what kind of profit he's looking at. I mean, I know you're paying in $35 plus tax and shipping for his books, but how much is he paying? What is the cost of it? I would have no way of knowing that. I mean, the only way I could even find out anything close to that is to maybe ask the retailer, what's your cost for this? And who knows if they tell me. That's probably trade secret information or stuff. I used to know a guy who ran a comic book shop, so at the time I could have asked him, but I guess that's not feasible now. He's since quit there. But I just want to say, when you see people who see other people's good ideas, when you see people who can spot other good ideas and implement those good ideas, that is when you found a successful person. Because there's a lot of people who will see exactly what he saw and they won't lift a finger to do it, even though they know they could make money off of it. And those are not the entrepreneurs out there. Those are not the salespeople out there. We've got a comment from Sonic Man. Who gets the tax write-off for donating ISOM number 2? Is it Eric July's company or you, the person who bought ISOM number 2 half off for Eric then to donate? I would assume that he is the one getting the tax write-off from that. If he is in fact, because you are paying in the charity, you might be able to write that off. Although you are purchasing a product and then he's doing the donating of it. That's an interesting question. I really don't know how the taxes on that would go, but I would assume that that's not something you should try writing off on your taxes. I know Rippaverse is not what you would call a nonprofit company, anything but. That is the last thing that he wants to be, is a nonprofit company. So I would assume that it is not something that you can write off on your taxes, and just, if you're going to donate, then just be prepared to bite the bullet for the full $17.50. Nice try, but of course, you always save the most money by not donating at all. But then, there's a kid out there who's not going to get an ISOM number 2 comic. And, ISOM number 2? I mean, I guess that's a way to get kids hooked on the middle of the story and maybe get them into. I just thought maybe ISOM number 1 would be the better book to donate, because I don't know. Do you think that there's anything in ISOM number 1 that you would find objectionable to put into a school or a library or a children's hospital or something like that? I don't know. On one hand, it's funny. It's like the video I made about ISOM. Is ISOM a black redneck? Which was basically based off of Thomas Sowell's book, Black Rednecks and White Liberals. If you look at the character of Avery Silman in ISOM number 1, there's, as far as his propensity for violence goes and his need for retribution goes, he fits the character of a black redneck, per Thomas Sowell's definition. And that's not a heroic archetype. It's not heroic to basically want to repay insult with violence. And that is the stage at which ISOM number 1 starts the character off. So I'm not sure if ISOM number 1 is the place to go if you want to find a book that's worthy of donating to one of these hospitals or other kinds of charities. ISOM number 2 may be the right book, because you get the impression that, at least from the video, which is, like I've said before, it's an excellent video for selling a book. ISOM number 2 is setting Avery up to mature as a hero. Now, that's something that how much he matures as a hero is not something that's really apparent. I mean, he might just get the idea, no quitting, like the video says, no more quitting. Whether he evolves beyond that in the course of the book, that's probably something to be seen later. What I'm really hoping for, and I don't know if I'm going to get it or not, is that I'm hoping that ISOM number 2 is not entirely a flashback book, because I know it is going and focusing on the past in his journey, and he's talking with the tailor apparently about what was it that caused him to quit in the first place, and what can the tailor expect from him this time. Although what kind of burden the tailor is authorized to place on him in the first place, I don't know what that is. But to just go completely back to the past, I mean, maybe that'll work, but I'm going to wind up being disappointed at that if there's not at least a little bit of present day stuff. What we do get to see Darren. We do get to see Darren in his office, and he's talking to his office guys. So that some of this is set in the present. But how much and what kind of interaction there's going to be, it's almost like I'm not expecting a whole lot of story out of this whole first arc of ISOM at this point. Because when you look at it, aside from the chance encounter with Yaira and Alpha Core, ISOM number 1, I mean, spoiler warning if you haven't read the book, pretty much amounts to there's a girl missing. He goes to look for her. He goes to a particular club where he thinks she might be. She's not there, but he gets his ass beat by a guy who's bigger than him. He goes back later and beats the guy up, and now he's afraid for his family's safety. Okay, that's pretty much the sum and substance of ISOM number 1. Now, of course, it's more entertaining than that, but the general gist is not a whole ton of story in that particular book. Now, in this particular book that we're supposed to get now with ISOM number 2, we will be seeing, more of Avery's past, what it was, maybe what spurred him to become a hero in the first place, maybe what he intends to do in the future. And the only problem is that it could very easily go the way of, with the exception of little bits here and there, like meanwhile back at the ranch kind of scenes, literally in this case, since he owns a ranch. We might wind up dwelling entirely in the past for this entire issue. And if that's the case, that's going to be a bummer, because I would rather see the present story progress just as much as the past story. But I don't know, 112 pages, there might be time. It's just that there is such a drive these days in comics to decompress the storytelling and have something take place over a real long period of time, or at least over several pages. For one particular scene. What do we got here? It's a shame that DC has not done this donating to charity. For the past few years, DC produced some really great 20-page superhero mini comics that appeared in Cheerios cereal boxes. That's from Sonic Man. Yeah, I haven't seen any of those. I mean, it's that I can't speak for Marvel and DC and why they haven't decided to do that. That is one way of generating interest. Those mini comics were appropriate for kids. Not sure if ISOM's world is a good fit for kids. That is kind of interesting in the sense of, what does constitute a good book for kids, especially today, And I'm thinking of all the things that they're trying to push towards kids' ways, and what parents would actually want to see in that kind of content. Of course, if you go back and you look at some of the Marvel stuff that was coming out in the 80s and the 90s, and whoops, told you I was going to be kicking that thing. If you look at some of the Marvel and DC stuff that came out in the 80s and the 90s, and I mean, some of that stuff was pretty rough too. God, I remember the what was it? The Fantastic Four version that was it. Jerry Ordway and who was it? Was Carl Kiesel the one writing Adventures of Superman at the time? And they came up with the idea for the guy who would eventually become the cyborg Superman. But it was Hank Henshaw and his crew of astronauts, and they just wound up being the most god-awful version of the Fantastic Four you could think of. I mean, a guy who is like pure radiation and ends up dissolving in the sun. There's another guy who he's a lump of flesh and metal that he's in so much pain that he decides to just suicide by ripping himself apart in a magnet. The only person who manages to get saved is the wife, and the other guy, instead of being elastic, his flesh just dissolves and he's left as a skeleton by the end of the book. I mean, it's just a horrific take on the Fantastic Four. And that kind of stuff, I mean, yeah, that'd be kind of brutal on a kid, but at the same time, that's exactly what we were reading back in the day. I don't really think that I got the impression that comics weren't for kids anymore until, and I don't remember where this was. I thought for sure it was in Mighty Avengers with Brian Michael Bendis doing thought balloons, but it might have been in a different comic. But there's a comic around the time that you had it was post Civil War, and you had Yellow Jacket visiting the Wasp, and in a thought balloon she said, "No, Hank, I am not having sex with you." And I read that and I'm just like, oh my God, comics are not for kids anymore. Comics are done as a medium for kids. We just don't need to have kids reading this stuff. This is not anything like, oh my gosh. Of course, it's almost like the music that you used to listen to that as a child you thought was completely innocent, especially if you're listening to country and western and stuff, and you hear these songs and they're about adultery, they're about philandering, they're about cheating, they're about all these illicit love affairs, and they sound so good. And as a child, you don't think anything of the words, and sometimes you just translate them into just friendship songs and stuff like that. Because as a child, what else do you know? You're innocent at that point, or at least you were back in those days, back when you didn't have a smartphone to basically show you in graphic detail everything that wasn't innocent in the world. So yeah, you can look back at some of those songs and it's like, yeah, I don't even know what to make of the Ding-a-ling song now. I mean, that used to be a popular song back in the day. You look it up. I'm not even going to try and sing those words. God, somebody would probably put a screen clip of me singing that out there. But my goodness, yeah, comics. What comics are for kids that you would actually feel comfortable donating them to a hospital, charity, school, library, something like that? That's a good question. So anyway, so this has been my post-Juneteenth live stream. I just wanted to say hi to everybody. I hadn't done one of these in a few days, and like I said, I was going to do this yesterday, but Ethan Van Sciver's live stream was on, and I thought there was no sense trying to compete with that. I might need to either put this later at night. I noticed I don't think I ever got more than 3 or 4 concurrent viewers at one time, but at the same time, I've kind of got a boring background here, and it doesn't have the same homey feel that my earlier background did, which was basically, I mean, this is not like fake or anything. This is just my actual bare ass wall. But my living room has the unfortunate thing of having that tall window in the back where you have the alcove kind of window, and the light shines through it, and the glare apparently is so bad from that people were complaining about the last live stream, saying, oh, that thing brightened things up too much, you got to do something about that. Well, I mean, short of putting construction paper up there to try and block it, what am I supposed to do? So I'll try and figure something out. Maybe I'll just sit at an angle in my usual living room chair, or do something like that. So anyway, y'all have a good Tuesday. Oh God, is it Tuesday? Yeah, it is Tuesday, isn't it? Yeah, have a good rest of your Tuesday evening. I'm Mike Partika. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, do click on like. Also subscribe if you haven't already. You'll get notified of future live streams, and hopefully maybe one of them will have a more interesting backdrop than this. And I will talk to y'all later.